Lots of developments on the vaccine front. First, the good news. We are finally making headway in getting first doses into arms. And as of today, anyone over 18 can book an appointment. But what about second doses and the government's controversial decision to delay those for 4 months? Here in Ontario, as we talked about earlier in the show, we have 50,000 unused doses of AstraZeneca set to expire soon. And while using this product for a first dose has been paused, the current evidence is that the likelihood of a clot when it's used as a second dose is about 1 in a million. So is Ontario just going to let those go to waste while they sit around waiting for them or for the National Advisory Council on Immunization to make a decision? And there's new data from a Spanish study that shows that mixing vaccines is safe and effective. But over the weekend, a Canadian researcher involved in developing the AstraZeneca vaccine warned that the side effects from mixing vaccines can, in fact, be severe. What do you think? 416-360-0740, toll free 1-866-740-4740. Now let's go to Dr. Raywat Deonandan, epidemiologist and associate professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Ottawa, and Dr. Gerald Evans, chair of the Division of Infectious Diseases at Queen's University. Hello, and thanks so much for being with us.
Good afternoon.
Okay, first, let us go to Dr. Deonandan. What do you think of the government sitting on these 50,000 doses of AstraZeneca?
It's curious. On the one hand, I get the need to respond to the population's reluctance and hesitation around this vaccine. On the other hand, they're about to expire. These are precious, precious assets that the world needs. My feeling is if we're not going to use them, decide pretty soon and ship them to a place like India, where clearly the benefits well outweigh the risks, and we can use mRNA doses for everyone else here. Unless we make a quick decision right now about who gets the second doses.
Well, that's one option, but to me, it's not at all clear that mixing the doses is a good idea, and I have even anecdotally heard from lots of people who had a first dose of AstraZeneca who said, I'd be happy to get it. What's the problem if the number shows 1 in a million, Dr. Evans?
Yeah, well, I think we kind of hit the nail on the head. Dr. Deonandan just made a point. Listen, these AstraZeneca vaccine was about half of the vaccination that went into the UK, and we've seen what impact that's had in the UK. They now have a strong plan for reopening based on the fact that it provides great protection. I would be a little bit concerned about saying that mixing the vaccines produces serious consequences. What it does is that some of the symptoms that we associate with any of these vaccines, sore arm, fevers, fatigue, muscle pain, stuff like that, are a little bit more profound in people who got a different vaccine on their first and second doses, but none of it suggests that there's an increased safety signal problem. And as you said, second doses of AstraZeneca have not been associated with as high a risk for the development of that vaccine-induced thrombocytopenic thrombosis problem. So other than making sure that that interval is right, it's about 3 months for AstraZeneca, probably pushing them forward. But I totally agree with my I'll call him my good friend because he and I know each other from Twitter, is like, if we're not going to use it, we need to send it around the world where it can be used. And right now, I would certainly agree India is a great place to send it to.
Well, I want to take that up. And, when we had those preliminary results on mixing vaccines last week, it sounded like it was no big deal. On the weekend, I heard from Dr. John Bell. Now, obviously, he's an interested party. He was one of the developers of the AstraZeneca vaccine. But he used, what was the clinical term he used? It was something like severe reactogenity. I mean, I don't know. He made it sound like it could be really quite bad.
Yeah, he's talking about reactogenicity. So that's like what happens to you when you get administered a substance, in this case a vaccine. And what he's talking about is exactly that. The reactogenicity that we're seeing is simply some of the effects that would happen when you stimulate the immune system with an antigenic compound. In this case, it's a spike protein that's facilitated by either the messenger RNA or the adenovirus vector DNA to produce it. It does not suggest in what I've read and looked at within that article that there's a safety issue with mixing the vaccines.
So what do you make of what he said? He was very critical of our government's response, saying that their reaction to AstraZeneca is based on hearsay, not facts. Dr. Deonandan?
It's curious. I mean, I respect him deeply. He's clearly a much smarter man than me. But Dr. Jerry was saying just now is absolutely right. We define severe a bit differently here. Severe to me is, does it require hospitalization? From the data I've seen, none of the mix and match people end up hospitalized because of these reactogenic reactions. In fact, I would argue that some of these reactions might be due to a superior immunogenic response. Maybe it's even better than keeping it same.
Okay.
So his criticism of our approach, I mean, it's fair. Anyone can criticize it. But it seems to me that we are succeeding in getting more first doses into more arms than we would have otherwise had. So at the end of the day, I think we're going to be shown to be correct.
Let's go to this Spanish study that just came out this morning. It's the CombiVax study. And it found that the presence of antibodies in the bloodstream was between 30 and 40 times higher in people who got the follow-up Pfizer than the control group who received only one AstraZeneca dose. I'm not sure that that's comparing apples and apples, 2 doses compared to 1, but it also found that there were more antibodies after a Pfizer dose than after a second AstraZeneca dose.
Yeah, and I'll just answer that because this is something that we have been observing, is that the different platforms of the vaccines tend to induce a stronger response in parts of the immune system than others. And if you want to simplify the immune system, which, by the way, is very complex, is you can talk about antibody production and you can talk about T-cell responses. What we know about the adenovirus vector vaccines is they seem to induce a more of a stronger T-cell response. And that's not measurable easily. You have to look at T cells in a different way. The mRNA vaccines tend to stimulate the humoral system, which produces antibodies, which are really easy to measure. So you can measure antibodies a lot. I would just always warn people to be careful with looking at antibody levels in isolation because it's a surrogate marker. The marker we really care about is, does it prevent you from getting sick? Does it prevent you from getting infected? And antibodies can be part of that signal. But the antibody measurement itself is a marker that is you want to say it functions as a surrogate for what you ultimately care about, which is, did it prevent disease or did it prevent infection? And that's where people sometimes get pulled astray. You have to understand exactly how the immune system works. And what we think happens is that T-cell responses protect you from getting sick and dying, and antibody responses probably are important in that aspect, but also in the aspect of actually preventing you from getting infection.
That study in Spain had volunteers between the age of 18 and 59. So is that a problem in terms of what the reaction might be in older people?
Well, we know that younger individuals tend to have more of that reactogenicity that you were talking about. So that's because their immune systems are very vigorous, and it is principally a component of the immune system that's causing that reactogenicity. So that's a younger population, right? That's basically young adults to middle-aged adults and not including elderly individuals. Elderly individuals may have a little bit less reactogenicity. It generally is a generic thing. And they also tend to have slightly lower responses to vaccines in general than young people do. So it is important to look at the population that's being studied to determine what's going on exactly there. But again, we have to be very careful looking at surrogate markers and not the clinically relevant marker that's important.
Okay, for the record, I really resent referring to people over 59 as elderly.
I do too, and for a good reason. I'm over 59.
Okay, let's take a call from Dave in Etobicoke. Hello, Dave.
Oh, hi. I have a question regarding the variants. We hear it said that there's a UK variant, an Indian variant, the South African variants, and the words used are that it was first identified in those geographies. So I'm trying to understand, is there something unique in their environment that made that variant? Or another way to put it is, are variances that we have in Canada imported, or will they just naturally develop so at some point in time we'll say there's a Canadian variant?
Good question.
If you don't mind. I mean, these variants arise because there's lots of transmission happening. So places in the world where lots of people are getting the disease are the places where the variants will arise. Variants arise because the virus has an opportunity to test itself, to play around. So the more people who are infected, the more opportunity the virus has. And in fact, the more sick people are, then the more opportunity the virus is to sort of strengthen itself against the antibodies that are present. So the variants arise from places like India and Brazil and South Africa and the UK because that's where a lot of people happen to have the disease. Will a Canadian variant arise? It's always possible. I would say the odds are against it because we don't have nearly as much transmission as in those other places in the world. And as we get a handle on this disease in the next few years, the rate at which variants will be produced will be lowered. But expect more to arise because this disease is nowhere near tamed yet. So expect a few more over the next few years.
Thank you, Dave.
I totally agree with Raywat. That's exactly the point. And the fact is that once you drop the levels of infection low, there's very little viral replication going on. The virus, therefore, even though it randomly mutates, really doesn't have an advantage anymore.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got to take another break. We'll be back with more from epidemiologists Dr. Raywat Deonandan and Dr. Gerald Evans. Before we go to break, the numbers to call if you have questions or comments, especially on all the brouhaha over AstraZeneca, 416-360-0740, toll-free 1-866-740-4740. We'll be right back.
I'm Marilyn Weston, and I give it to you straight from a woman's perspective here on Zoomer Radio every Saturday morning at 8. This Saturday, get investment advice from Leslie McCormick of the Farwell Group. Learn how to get a healthy gut naturally from Dr. Betty Rosendahl of Thornhill Naturopathic. Discuss women and immunity with Dr. Vivian Brown, author of The New Woman's Guide to Healthy Aging, and learn more from others of the team. So join us and be empowered by the experts from a woman's perspective this Saturday morning at 8, exclusively here on Zoomer Radio.
Fight Back with Libby Znaimer on Zoomer Radio.
Welcome back. We are talking about vaccines, the rollout, and also about all the problems, especially with communications around AstraZeneca. And my question is this: is there another country that it is in a really similar position that we are in, where we've had a lot of people vaccinated with AstraZeneca with just one dose and now waiting to see what to do about the second one? Or are we pretty unique in that, Dr. Evans?
Well, certainly some of the European countries which have been using AstraZeneca, have at times sort of paused how they're looking at the future rollout and whether it should just be confined to second doses for people who've already received it versus continuing to use it as first doses. But I would say it probably reflects a certain degree of Canadiana. We tend to be very cautious people. We really have a hard time, and I think we tend to follow very strongly some sort of, what you would say is a precautionary principle. So even though we're only seeing, the thrombosis problem with AstraZeneca in somewhere between 1 in 50,000 within certain groups up to, 1 in 250 to 500,000 in other groups with first doses, the sort of general view is, well, let's pause and wait. And plus we've got so much of the other vaccines coming in. So I think that's a little bit of a reflection of how we are in Canada.
Yeah, Dr. Deonandan, because I know that there are places that, Denmark isn't using it. I know that the European Union is actually suing AstraZeneca for not delivering on time. But I can't think of a place where you have a million or more people who've got this thing waiting to see what's next.
Yeah, neither can I. I know Denmark has at least some people getting second doses with a non-AstraZeneca vaccine. So the mix and matching is already happening in real time in some places. But I don't think it's at anything resembling scale. So I think we're unique in that sense. You have to keep in mind, though, the AstraZeneca vaccine is the preferred vaccine of the world in the sense that it's the one that most countries want because it's affordable. It can be stored at a comfortable temperature and distributed easily. So I think over 100 countries use it right now, whereas about 78 use Pfizer. Which is the next most common one. So there is no shortage of demand for this vaccine, which is why our supply needs to be sent somewhere if we're not going to use it.
Well, exactly. And what I have heard explained is that, that it's important for us to help vaccinate the rest of the world so that there be fewer variants.
It's not only the right thing to do, it's a selfish thing for us to do. It's self-serving. If we can, pandemics are global. The word means a global disease. So the disease doesn't go away unless we extinguish it everywhere. So if it's brewing in India and Brazil, we have to extinguish it in India and Brazil because it affects the rest of the world. Variants will arise. We'll get reinfected by travel. It affects global economics. It affects everything. So selfishly keeping vaccine to ourselves may sound like an appropriate thing to do to get our economy up and rolling faster, but ultimately it does not solve the larger problem. We have to extinguish this fire everywhere where it is burning around the world simultaneously.
Let's take a call from Barb in Orangeville. Hello, Barb.
Yes, hello there. I'm calling because I'm in a long-term care residence, and I had the Moderna shot in January, and we were to get the second one the 28th of February, and it turned out they gave it to us a week early, the 27th, and it was also the Moderna. And I'm wondering, does that lessen the quality of the shot being a week early, and would we need to get a booster at some time?
Sounds like you got it right on time, unlike most people. Yeah. I will let the doctors answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to step in on this one because there was another study that just was released and published about the issue of what the ideal interval should be. And if you know anything about vaccine science, which I seem to know a little bit about as an infectious disease doctor, is the ideal interval between a first and second shot to get the durability of the response and everything is about 3 months. And that's because the first shot affects a population of cells which start the initial process, and then you have to wait for that process to die down and then administer it about 3 months to get an effect on what we call memory cells. There's memory B cells and T cells. So that study showed that, in fact, if you wait a longer interval, you get a better, more durable response. Some of us have been saying that for months now. And it's important, and again, I've said this to people before, the 3-week interval for Pfizer and 4-week for Moderna was all based on the fact that that's how they constructed their clinical trial. They wanted to do it quickly, get some results out, get it approved, and get it into people's arms to help control the pandemic. It is not the way we would normally want to administer a vaccine, which is typically 3 months in between a first and second dose. And what we're seeing now is that vaccine science is maintained when we're using these mRNA vaccines. The question that your callers asked is a fantastic one. It's the one I'm being asked a lot. And it is possible that in order to maintain the durability of response, they may require actually a third shot because the first 2 shots were very close together and not idealized in what we know about vaccine science. And like I said, that study that was released recently from the group in Birmingham basically shows that that 3-month interval is better than a 3-week or 4-week interval.
And that holds for mRNA, because my understanding was yes for the viral vector, but no for the mRNA.
No, it applies to the mRNA vaccines as well. There was a mixed bag of people that they looked at, both with AZ, the AstraZeneca vaccine, and people with the Pfizer vaccine. And that interval, in fact, the study looked more specifically at the Pfizer vaccine, the mRNA vaccine, than the Astra. The AstraZeneca has always been mandated to be 3 months between first and second shot.
Okay, well, Barb,
now,
thanks.
Can I ask one more question? Am I better to get that third shot now, having had the second shot in February?
I don't think you'll be able to get it even if you want it.
Even if I wanted to, eh? Okay. I'm just getting the information, and I'm going to pass it on to the retirement home here because we all got it at the same time.
Okay, well...
So you are well protected right now, ma'am, I would just say stay tuned for what advice is going to be coming and emerging out. 2 shots together still provides a very good protection in terms of what we see with vaccine efficacy measurements based on the original intervals done in the trial.
Good for at least a year to start with.
Okay, thanks, Barb.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Let's go to Doreen in Newmarket. Hello, Doreen.
Oh, hello. What I was wondering, I know there's a certain batch of AstraZeneca that will be no good after the end of this month, which is not very much longer. It's only just over a week. Could that not at least be used as a second shot for people that already had it? Because I would think that's it's too late to send that to another country. By the time it was sent to another country, it would have, be no good.
Yeah, we've been talking about that. I'll let the doctors address it again. Thanks, Doreen.
Sure, I'll take that one. Yeah, it expires in a week, but guess what? We can get it to India tomorrow if we wanted to, and they could put it in arms the very next day. So a week is a lot of time for this vaccine to do some good. So I think we should start making that decision as soon as possible.
Yeah, I don't know why they're dithering. Dr. Evans, do you have any insight on whether we'll get a decision on that?
Yeah, I mean, the process is moving along as quick as it can, but I guess I'd make my pitch that, unfortunately, when decisions like this fall in the political arena, that's where you tend to get sort of a lot of dithering going on. And I totally agree with what Raywat was saying. You can get this into people's arms the day after tomorrow in some countries where you ship it to. That political decision-making is always made on the idea of, are we going to be criticized? Are we going to be applauded for our efforts or whatever else? Because, the science tells us, look, if you're not going to use it, give it to a place where it can be used quickly, efficiently, and effectively.
Now, isn't the theory that NACI doesn't make political decisions, that they're only moved by the science?
Yeah, absolutely right. My colleagues who work on NACI definitely look at the science. They provide advice, which is not mandatory for any government to follow, but it's based on a really good analysis of the science. I think, they're continuing to look at where that evidence lies and to sort of try and give the best advice. I would say one of the things that happens with groups that are meeting to do things like this is when they're roundly criticized. And when NACI made the decision about preferred vaccines with the mRNAs over AstraZeneca, there was a lot of criticism that went around. It was about communication, mind you, but that really, that sort of once bitten, twice shy issue is an important one as we're working our way through the pandemic. Mike Ryan said a year ago, speed is the enemy, is the problem. If you're not moving quickly, you're going to make some mistakes at some point. But if that's what's going to stop you from moving forward, then that's not a good thing.
Well, yeah, and they could have somebody who knows how to communicate. We're almost out of time. Dr. Deonandan, what would you like to leave us with?
The end is there. Some optimism there. We're on the path to normal, so just hang in there. We're almost there.
And Dr. Evans?
Oh, boy, he said it all for me. Yeah, I think we're really moving quickly now. We're going to have lots of vaccine. This is going to be a summer of emerging from the cocoon of the pandemic, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, that's good to hear. Nice to end on such a positive note. Thank you so much, Dr. Ray Deonandan and Dr. Gerald Evans. We appreciate your time.